The Jarrells is like sunshine in a bottle. It's like, how do you get sunshine and adventure and warmth, and how many weird instruments can you get in there? Because it's like all about animals and zoos and stuff. Didgeridoos, jaw harp, and a Greek choir on that one. And then Sanditon is like rock and roll, folk and roll. That's what we're gonna. Yeah, we decided to do Jane Austen in a folk and roll manner. Why not? Why the hell not?
Folk and roll.
And that's the band, and that's the theme. Getting that into 30 seconds was quite tricky, but it's basically the band that played all the music in the show, and then we recorded all the score with the same band, which was kind of really, really cool. So like all three things are so different, but yeah. Okay. I did that 60 seconds. So, did I make it?
You did it brilliantly, and every composer, we have huge amounts of music students from UNT and elsewhere listening to this, and what Ruth has just described is just a sort of a masterclass in the art of title design, musical title design, and also paying attention to your story. But also the key thing you keep saying, Ruth, is there's this instinctive thing. You can't think about this too much. You have to be instinctive.
Shoot from the hip. It really was. I mean, Daryl's definitely was a shoot from the hip. I have a 20-minute rule as well. Like if I haven't got a theme in 20 minutes, I don't mean finish, but like the idea, then it's probably shit. And that's because I'm so instinctive. It's like, that's it. And then you get all the musicians around. That's it.
So we have a great question here from Nolan. Phenomenal question. Check this out. How would you say you're able to establish your own musical identity and sound despite the many opposing genres and mediums you've written for?
God, it's just each one. You just have to kind of crack what the nut of this, what it is. That's the joy of it. I think that's the distinctiveness about it. Is just going there. I think it'd be boring if everything sounded the same. I think I would get a bit bored. I love to just dive in and explore and find the right people, the right chemistry, like we talked before. It's the musicians that I work with all kind of feed off each other. That's what I found with Sanditon, especially this incredible energy working with those musicians, which I was just kind of knocked back by when we recorded the music for the pre-records. And then I was like, man, I've got to get these people to do the rest. And it's something you've never done before. I think it's just fun with each job is to put, and I think that's the signature. It's just like, that's what I would do, is just, I bring people to the table that maybe other people wouldn't. A bit like the milk tray advert coming in.
Yes.
Coming in with my balaclava with a special box of chocolates with these musicians that are just they are though. I mean they are. They are literally I hunted
You are the musical milk tray.
I'm the musical milk tray. That's it. I am the musical milk
tray.
So
you are the musical milk tray man. No, you're the milk tray woman crashing through
and you don't know which window it's going to be. You don't know if it's going to be a shark, a yacht, skiing down a mountain. You don't know where I'm going to come from next, but it's going to hit you in the gut. It's going to hit you somewhere. Oh, he's not violent. It's going to taste great.
Okay, with that, I think we should go straight to Sanditon. Shall we go straight to the carriage ride from Sanditon?
Yeah, let's say that.
Yes, let's do that. Because then that will get us into the whole discussion with your musicians.
This is all about, and what we did together on Sanditon, which was pretty different, I think, and we were quite scared as well at times, weren't we? Like, is this what? Are we really doing this?
I was thrilled more than scared.
Okay, good.
I was thrilled more than scared.
But it was really exciting.
Park and nothing bad can happen, can it?
Just be careful. That's all.
Careful of what, Papa?
Everything.
Bye, Charlotte.
We are coming in. Do you feel a difference in the air, Miss Hayward? Sea air. Better than any medicine or tonic. And there is the sea itself.
Oh, yes, I see it.
Doesn't it make your spirits soar?
Tom, can't expect Charlotte to be as excited by a glimpse of salt water as you are.
Stuff and nonsense. I'll wager that within a few days she'll be as keen as mustard on it.
Indeed, Mrs. Parker. I'm eager to see everything.
Now we are just coming up to Sanditon House, Lady Denham's place. Now she is the great lady of the town, very rich, and very much involved, as I am, in the future of Sanditon as a first-class bathing resort. You see, just coming into view now. Should we call upon her this very minute, my dear? I should like Miss Hayward to meet her, and I have business matters to discuss with her.
Before we see our own children, Tom?
No? Well, perhaps you're right. Indeed, you are right. Always. Trafalgar House and the children it is. This is civilization indeed.
Here we are!
Aww. Journey to Willingdon. See, that's got the bodyguard beat. There you go. Who was asking that question? There is a connection. There's that beat going through it, isn't there, Nolan? You know.
Yes, and also you never mentioned when we were doing this. We didn't talk about Flash Gordon, but I detect a lot of Flash Gordon in this now.
God, yeah.
Pulsing forward.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. But when we first, so after we did all the ballroom stuff, I mean, doing Sanditon was just this incredible experience, right? It was totally, I was totally in it from the beginning. So right from the very start, we collaborated.
So yes, let's talk about that a bit. So me and Ruth had already worked together on Victoria. That's where we got to know each other. And Ruth was my first and only choice for Sanditon. And when we started talking, the note I gave you, Ruth, was although this is set in the 19th century, it's all about this character who's building a seaside resort. And the closest correlation is someone who's doing an internet startup now, you know, someone who's an entrepreneur. And I was like, well, let's look at things like the social network and startup and Halt and Catch Fire and shows, contemporary shows that are about entrepreneurs, and they all have this very kind of pulsing beat that reflects the relentless nature of those characters. And I guess my note to you was just, how do we do that inside a classical 19th century kind of composition framework? And then you went off.
And then we also discovered that in that time, they like to get down. They got down to the folk tunes, and there are some really rip-roaring tunes. So we were like, let's rip up the dance floor on the. We're not going to have any dainty quadrilles in here, no. And
Yes.
in that time they went a bit wild. There was a wildness to it. So
Yes.
before we even started on the score, we'd already kind of we'd thrown Beethoven out the door and started to find all these folk tunes that could be really good for the ballroom scenes, and then thinking, wow, how are we going to rock this up, and Bodice's kind of I was going to say falling off. It wasn't that kind of show, but just people getting it made me think of the 50s and rock and roll and stuff like that.
That's right.
Swept off their feet a bit. And then we had a production meeting in which we were watching that really cool clip with the roller skating. Do you remember?
From Heaven's Gate. Yes, from Heaven's Gate.
Heaven's Gate, in which it was all going a bit crazy, like this guy playing a fiddle on roller skates. And I was like, oh man, that is kind of awesome. And then we were sort of talking about where we might find you were like, so people who can do that sort of thing, don't you? That's why I hired you. I'm like, yeah, of course I can. Yeah. Of course, yeah. And then we're like, where are we going to find
them? On the train to Scotland.
Yeah, but through working on Victoria, I'd done a Scottish episode, and Gilly Mackenzie was this amazing vocalist. And so I rang her. I was like, who do you know? She's like, oh, I know everybody. Like, I can put you in touch with like the creme de la creme of the folk scene, like the most authentic people who are playing it all the time. And so she put me in touch with Ewan Henderson, because we also needed a nice looking chap who could play fiddle in the ballroom scenes. And then he helped find this band, and then we recorded the tunes. I brought my cellist in from London, and he rocked it up so we didn't just make it folk, we put another spin on it so that it was those tunes, but then we gave it a bit of that Kraftwerk beat so that it sort of gave it a little bit of a modern kick without being wrong, if you see what I mean. That was our take on it.
So what you've described is this sort of 5-dimensional blend of the historical stuff. There was a folk revival in Regency England, and that was one of our inspirations. And Jane Austen herself, who was a very accomplished musician, had a huge collection of folk music. Then, the story, the narratival voice, entrepreneurs building things, all of that stuff. Then the sort of the ruthlessness of it, let's make it cool, let's make it groovy, let's make it driving. Then on top of that, this live element, which we're going to get to in our next clip, but that we always had this concept that we were going to have musicians playing in several scenes in the actual film. That in bar scenes, in the ball scene that we're about to see, we were going to have musicians playing live music during those scenes, and that music would be connected to your score and would also use musicians that you were using for your score band.
Yeah, exactly. We wanted to kind of connect everything together, and just thought, just because it was such an amazing vibe working with them, it was like, this would be nuts not to use them, even though they weren't. The classical side of things was trickier, but actually taking people out of their comfort zone and throwing some ideas around can actually make it sound even more fresh. So like recording the tune, we had all the ballroom stuff in the can, and then it was like, now we're going to start on the score. And that piece was the first piece that I started working on. So it was it was all about, what does Charlotte feel like going from this really hick small town in Britain to this exciting seaside town, this like entrepreneurial, the world, it was like the Vegas kind of thing. That's what we were pitching it as, that she's leaving her little village and she's going to Vegas and she's going to have the time of her life. So it's like getting that excitement feeling and the rhythmic drive, but also the sort of a tune that had a kind of aspirational, dreamlike quality to it, which is all about dreams and expectations of a young woman. So it was everything about Sanditon was all centered on Charlotte. So that theme became Charlotte's theme, and that we're always with her throughout that sort of first 3 episodes. It's from her perspective, and then that's what the audience are drawn to. And then obviously the love affair between her and Theo.
But the other thing,
did lots.
Watching it again, and I haven't actually watched that for a long time, is also the scale you bring, Ruth. There's a huge cinematic on top of all the elements that I just described. There's the artistry and the scale that you also bring. Could you just talk about, again, is that instinctive, or are you like layer it bigger?
Yeah, I am known to layer things. I think we said before, one director said, I've got a bucket of noise that I like to bring out because I put so much stuff in. I like to kind of throw the whole kitchen sink at it, and then we have to take things away to sort of bring it back to what it should be, its elements. Yes, it needed to have that epic. It needed to have epic quality, and that's something that I always just love, because I love Morricone, and I just love those kind of scores that just take you on a journey. So it takes you somewhere epic that it feels, I want to be here.
I don't know do you remember when we were in the mix, and both of us, we sort of egg each other on, and we were like, louder, it's not loud enough. I don't think it's loud enough either. And the mix was like, guys, I think this is too much. We're like, nonsense, louder. And then
did he break the fader? I know, they never make it loud enough, those dubbing mixes. No, some of them do. I want everything mixed like Flash Gordon, it's just like, come on, this is it. It's so fun to do epic stuff, and it's really fun. I mean, the response from the show, and was so positive. It was that was so great. Like, the audience really connected with the music and the show and everything. So that was it's cool.
Okay. I'm sorry, we've got so many. I mean, the board is just lighting up with questions. Hire Ruth for Bridgerton, says Undeniable Ops. He also says louder for the old grannies. JSVU, Beyond Cinematic.
Oh, that's great to hear. Louder for the grannies. Yeah, there's that that Aphex Twin video where he's just screaming at the granny. I mean,
that's Ruth.
That's what I yearn for, Come on, you don't need to hear the talking.
So I'm going to move things on because we've got so much more to do, and we're also going to have questions for you. But let's now go to our next Sanditon clip, which is the ball scene, and this is music that is being played in camera that Ruth and me pre-selected, and there's a story to go with it, with a very famous Celtic singer called Judy Fowlis. So let's play the scene. It's a 4-minute scene. Again, like so much of what we talked about tonight and so much of Ruth's stuff, it's all dovetailed with a lot of drama, a lot of dialogue in between, a lot of very, very, very powerful music. So we'll play it, and then we'll talk about how we came to do this scene.
Very happily, sir. Beg your pardon.
Not necessary. Any for your thoughts, Miss Hayward?
I was thinking how very hard it is to make people out.
Did anyone particular provoke that thought?
People in general. I like to amuse myself by observing and trying to make conclusions. But in a place like Sanditon, where strangers mingle freely, it's hard to form a reliable judgment. People can be so difficult to interpret. Don't you find?
And what have you observed about me upon our small acquaintance?
I think that you must be the sensible brother of the three.
Oh, the sensible brother. And what makes you say that?
Well, I may be mistaken, but it seems to me that your younger brother Arthur is a very contrary nature, alternately over-lethargic and over-energetic, while your elder brother Tom could be called over-enthusiastic. I'm afraid that despite his good nature, he neglects his own happiness and his family's in his passionate devotion to Sanditon. Don't you agree?
On my word, Miss Hayward, you are very free with your opinions.